Well, we're now over halfway through the main run of episodes. What do you think so far? I try not to inundate you with requests for feedback, but the future of this show really will be guided by what you want to hear more about. And now's a great time to call in. The number is 615-953-0360. This will take you straight to a voicemail box where you can leave your questions, opinions, experiences, or requests. I prefer getting your thoughts this way because I really want to do a question-answer style bonus episode someday. So if you've ever dreamed about hearing your voice on a podcast, I might just be able to make your dream come true. If you're shy, you can also email professionalthirdwheelpodcast@gmail.com or DM the show on Facebook or Instagram. There are links to all this in the show notes, so you're literally one click away right now. You're already this close, why not go for it? Maybe you don't have any questions or think the show has been absolutely perfect up to this point. Great, there's something you can do too. You already know what I'm gonna say, so say it with me. Leave a review. I say it every episode, but it's the best way to help others find this show. Statistics show that on average, very few podcast listeners ever engage in any way. Are you just gonna take that? Statistics just called you average. I don't think so. My listeners aren't average. They're well above average? What's that called? Exceptional. My listeners are exceptional. All right, that's enough of that. On to the show. Special thanks to the word Earth for sponsoring today's episode. It means the world. Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm single and almost all of my friends are married, but that hasn't stopped me from being in their lives. In this podcast, I will talk with these friends and try to prove that, though friendships between married and single people might seem intimidating at first, it's really not that hard. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. I have absolutely no vocational qualifications whatsoever. I might be coming at it with a Christian worldview, but I don't work in ministry and I'm not a counselor. What I do have to offer is experience. Over a third of my life spent being what my friends have dubbed a professional third wheel. All right, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I generally have 3 people on because it's a Third Wheel podcast, but today we've got 4 people on, which seems blasphemous, but I have a point, I promise. So one thing I kind of couldn't ignore in terms of third wheel relationships is kind of like the ultimate form of one, which is when a single person decides to live with married people, or I guess I should say married people decide to adopt a single person to live with them because it's generally their decision. But
I think it's both things.
Right. So I have a little bit of experience, but I feel like compared to my friends here today, I'm an amateur, and which is why I wanted to talk to them because they've got a little more experience. So today I've got my single friend Bethany, and I've got my married friends Mason and Nichole. How y'all doing, guys?
That's me.
Yeah, so let's kick it off. I like to kind of ask the married people some questions first. So Mason, Nichole, how long have y'all been married?
We just celebrated 10 years. Do you want to add more to that?
That's the answer.
That is the answer.
She wants to add the rest of her life to that.
We actually, we went to...
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yes, I want to add forever with you.
10 years, and we're going forever. No, we just celebrated 10 years literally last week.
Wow.
Well, yeah.
How timely.
To Bermuda and New York City.
You came back from Bermuda.
We did.
Congratulations.
We didn't get to see any triangles there, though.
Yeah. 10 years. That is no small feat. Congrats, guys.
Thanks.
Y'all have a little girl as well. How old is she?
Skylar is 5.
Yeah.
So we waited 5 years basically to have a kid.
Yeah, that's like perfect. Like literally half of your marriage.
Yep.
I think everything just has to be done in 5s now.
What do you want to do at 15?
I don't have an answer.
Everything's in 5s.
Give me
like
5
what?
years and I'll tell you. Yeah. No, I mean, that the OCD in me is so happy that everything is so nice and even with your stuff.
And
here,
all of our dates are multiples of 3.
That is true.
Yeah,
Or
hey,
somehow related to the number
Like
3.
we met on a day that had a 3. We started dating on a day that had a 3 in it. We got engaged on a day that had a 3 in it. Ooh, we have a 3 in our daughter's birthday. We're just doing all the 3s.
threes.
We're good with 3s.
3s are great. Yeah.
3s.
3's a good number. Yeah. Okay. Well, how long have the 3 of you known each other?
Oh my God.
I don't know. Is it 8? 7?
Probably 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was actually in our 3rd year of marriage. That
Okay.
That's the last one, I swear.
And the first time you moved in with us was pretty soon.
You were pregnant.
So we did know you for a little while.
Yeah, for a little bit.
You said the first time, so you've lived together more than once.
This is
Round 3.
tour 3
Oh my
at
gosh.
Casa de Profe.
They made the joke.
Yeah, that wasn't you.
That wasn't me that time.
Wow, no, how perfect. See, that's why I wanted to have you on, because that's pretty expert. And like the fact that like you've lived together that many times, but then decided to live with each other again after that is testament to how well you actually get along and like each other. So
It was actually this third time we were kind of like, we kind of want Bethany to come back and live with us.
Isn't that like kind of, didn't we kind of say something?
Okay, I'm going to annoy myself here. So I lived with them and then spent 3 years apart from them.
what have we begun?
It's just what happened.
It's a miracle.
And I would still come over for dinner every Monday. And pretty much every Monday, Nichole specifically, but no, Mason, you would say it too. You'd be like, when are you moving back?
Oh,
For 3 years. So, and then I did. Here we are.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you said y'all knew each other pretty well before you lived together the first time,
No.
right? Or is that how you
No,
got to
I
know
don't
each
think
other?
we did.
We didn't really, I had come to their small group a couple times and they found out my situation.
She was basically driving a crazy amount. Like she would come on Sunday nights to group and then she would drive back to Clarksville.
Which is an hour from
Oh my
Nashville.
gosh, I didn't know that.
and then would come back at the butt crack of dawn.
Drive a
on-
school bus.
Yeah.
I did know that. Yeah.
And so,
So I was
we were
making
like,
an hour drive every
Oh my
morning.
gosh.
And
why
then
do you
just-
not just sleep here and then start from, and like that's kind of how it started because it just, me and my logic, it did not make any sense for you to drive back to Clarksville.
And, I mean, it didn't, but I was just trying to
Right.
survive.
So that wasn't a full move in.
No, that one, and you were pregnant and miserable.
Awful. Horrible.
And I was big sad. And so I would go between your house and another couple's house
Yep.
and just go back and forth until I found a place that was right next door to them. Right next door. I didn't even know it when I first found out, but
Can't get
found this
away.
place.
What a wild time that was.
Indeed. And then then I lived next door to them for a year and 3 months. And then I was supposed to move with someone else and then they backed out. And then I was with you guys for about 6 months.
This stay is the longest stay
Yeah.
that's
It's
happened
been
so
like a
far.
year and a half
Yep.
this time
That's
around.
just crazy. So y'all are basically kind of quantumly entangled on some level then, because every time you move out, it just happens again.
Well, the previous time that I moved out, I really felt close to you guys.
Yeah.
And I didn't want us to slip into not having a relationship. And so I asked if we could keep our Monday dinners.
And I think that second time living together is really like when we super got to know
Yeah.
each other.
I would
Like,
agree.
I wouldn't say that we were all like besties but like by the time you left, we were like, oh, Bethany is our person.
Was the
Yeah.
second time when the bookshelf fell in your room?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that might have actually like sealed it because we were like,
We survived this together.
yeah, we survived this
Mutual trauma.
whatever.
I brought the devil and nails home.
Yeah.
I showed them Wild Wild Country, which if you know what that documentary is. Anyway, we're watching Wild Wild Country on Netflix, and then the shelf collapses in my room.
Well, we didn't know what it was.
We didn't know. We just heard this noise.
That's terrifying.
Yep.
You go in there with like a bat.
Well, we
Because
couldn't
they're,
get
like,
in.
literally doing some kind of crazy seance on TV.
We couldn't get in the room.
I
It
had to,
collapsed
like-
right in front of the door.
I had to like stop breathing and shimmy in.
We tried to get in through the window. It didn't work.
There was
my
it was a whole. I mean, like it literally fell entirely in front
in front of the door.
of the door.
It couldn't have fell at a worse spot.
Yeah.
Basically. It took like an hour and a half to like try to.
And Skylar
get
didn't wake
in.
up, right?
No.
No.
Classic. I mean, great. One less problem to deal with. Or you try to crawl through the window. Oh, that's so funny because that's kind of how like my living situation with the married couple I lived with started. Was I was driving out to their place a lot, and it was one of those things where I was there so much that they're like, "Do you want to just stay here? Like, just keep living here?" I was like, "Sure." Like, it was such a big help, and it was just cool to be able to just stay where I was already at all the time and not
Yeah.
have to do that drive. Because, see, I feel like sometimes those situations do just kind of practically begin, I guess, more so than just like, hey, you should just come live with us, But what I'm hearing you say is that it's always easier to have somebody live with you that you're a little more deeply connected with. But also sometimes there's just a very like leading to bring in somebody you don't know because you just see what they're dealing with and you're like, oh, well, let's just give them a place for a while. And do you think kind of just going forward after Bethany, because you've had such a good experience with Bethany still lives here. So like, I'm not trying to kick you out or anything, but like,
so when she moves on,
right. But if Bethany were to move on, and would y'all consider having a stranger again the same way if the thing came up?
Yeah, I think it would depend on the situation. So I think both Nichole and I are pretty good at reading people and like whatever situation they're in and being able to kind of discern what's going on. And I think the Holy Spirit helps us with that a lot as well. But I think in a lot of ways, especially like with Bethany, it was, even though we didn't know her, it was pretty plainly obvious that like this was going to be totally fine. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you can't take risks.
Well, it's more, for me, any of my shields are more because of Skylar.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like I would be a lot more hesitant now because of her than when it's just the two of us.
Fair point.
I think it would probably almost certainly be more towards someone who's female rather than male, just again because of that. But I think it would be a case by case basis.
Sure. Yeah.
There's definitely been times when there's been things that are like posted and we kind of are like, should we be the people that open our homes to this? Like we've definitely had that conversation a couple times. And I normally find myself a lot more hesitant. But like with the Bethany situation, like that was a person that we had decided we were going to be in community with. Like she was in our home group. So that was a way that we could help.
Right.
Like I don't see myself like responding to a
house
church bulletin thing.
Yeah.
Right. It would be someone we're semi in community with and see a need.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that is one way that kids change things too, because I have a lot of friends who, once they started having kids, they were a little more careful with who they brought into their house because you do feel more protective and you should. It's a scary world. But I think that also kind of, plays into like the believer versus non-believer roommate situation.
Absolutely.
Like, maybe if you didn't have a kid, you might be more willing to bring in somebody who's not a believer to, witness to them. And but if you do have a kid, it's a little bit more risky. And yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned your Monday nights that y'all had that you held on to, which you still do now, even though y'all live together still. Y'all have Monday nights that y'all hang out and do things. So what kind of stuff do y'all do on Monday nights?
I make dinner. That's the main thing. So the second time I lived with them, I wanted to do something for them just to show them I appreciated what they were doing. Mm-hmm. So I think I asked if that was a possibility. That I could.
Yeah, I think you said like, "Hey, how can I help?" or something. Or at least.
And then I came up with some ideas, and that was one.
Like one less meal to plan would be a major lift of a burden for me.
Yeah, and we picked a good day, and it was Monday.
And it's been Monday for years now.
Yeah, I mean at least 4.5 years now. We've been doing that, so
and pretty consistently. I mean, like I think the summer is when it breaks up a little more, just because like. Everybody's getting married and all
and I'm
that.
in all the weddings.
Well, and it was hard in COVID too.
Yeah.
But we stopped for a little bit during COVID, but not super long, honestly. It was something I wanted to continue to do. And not that I stopped making dinner because it just wasn't practical when I didn't live with you guys. Yeah. But I'd still come over. We'd have
Monday
dinner.
Night was still the night.
And then we have a show. We watch together and then hang out with Skylar beforehand, and occasionally we'll play games, but most of the time it's a show.
It's a show.
And it's still happening now because we didn't want to be just like ships passing in the night. Like, oh, you're just living here and that's the end of it.
But it also felt like a natural continuation of
Totally.
like this has been our family night for years now.
Well, and I had that same experience, Mason, when I lived with a married couple, is that we were like so close. And like it's kind of sad in some ways. Like we were so close, so we decided to live together, but then we got less close because we lived together, because we were just doing life and we were passing each other a lot. And so having that night where you're like, we're going to actually look at each other and like sit down and do something and like take care of our friendship at the same time is it's something I don't think a lot of people think you're going to have to do. It's like, oh, it's my friends, I'll be with them all the time. But it's like, life gets in the way sometimes. But I definitely had to like intentionally maintain that friendship more while I was living with them than when I wasn't. Because, when you're not living with them, when you see them, that's what you do. You're there to see them, but if you're just in their house, you're just kind of around,
Yeah. In a lot of ways, Bethany feels like a sister to us, but also at the same time, it has helped us still be like friends. That's not to say you're not friends with your sister or sibling or whatever, but at the same time, like it's helped it to still be a lively relationship other than just like, I live with this person.
Right.
Yeah. And I try to even not limit it just to Monday nights.
I think the thing though, that like part of the reason that by the grace of God, like we have the relationship we have is like everyone in our life knows that Monday night is Bethany night.
Mm-hmm.
There is something to prioritizing any relationship that makes it different.
Yep.
Even though like we do hang out other times, we do, it's not just like, well, it's not Monday, I don't need to talk to you today. Like that's not the way we're doing life, but it tells that person that like they matter to you for you to plan that way.
Mm-hmm.
You do that with marriage. So, we're a family, and so we prioritize each other.
Yep.
Or at least you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of standing plans. People who listen to this have probably heard me say that every episode, and I'm probably sick of hearing about it, so I won't go into it. But yeah,
well, he did not prompt us to say that.
Yes, no, I didn't. I think it's just the truth, and it's a sweet thing to know when people do that, because there is something different about that relationship. And I've talked to Bethany about this, but it's kind of how you fight loneliness sometimes, because if you have friends who literally think about you enough to reserve a whole night of their week for you and to fight other things off to keep that means so much. Like that is, at least in your darkest moments, you can't say nobody cares about you, because they obviously do. That's, I mean, especially during COVID, that was just a godsend for me. Because if I hadn't had that, I think I might have went insane. It's just something to look forward to every week. So obviously, y'all like each other. And y'all seem pretty good at communicating in terms of just, what you need. And you've had plenty of time to learn all of that stuff through the years. But have there been any kind of challenges that you can think of, just things that you've had to actually talk about that didn't just click immediately living together, that come to mind or anything?
The only one I've thought of is parenting, when you were like, we were seeing things happen.
Oh, yeah. So I've lived with other families before in which interaction with their children was really tricky. And so I became very, very hands off, like almost too good at boundaries, because I'm pretty good with boundaries typically. And there was a while at first where I would see Skylar do something, rebellious little something, and I would just stay completely out of it. And so I forget what happened.
It was a night when he was gone.
Yeah.
And something happened. You kind of asked me, you were kind of like, hey, like if I see something, I don't remember how you asked the question.
Yeah.
And I was like, you are an adult in this house. Like you discipline my kid. Like if you see it, call it.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing this village. But that's not how definitely want to know how parents feel about that. If you were.
And I'm very, even if I say something, which I don't say stuff too often to her, I pretty much leave that up to you guys. It's really only when I see her doing it behind y'all's back that I will say something. If other than that, I'm hands off. I'm like parent support.
Just like,
that's my
like if we've just said something and then it like derails, you're like, I think your mom said like.
For any of those football folks out there, it's like a linebacker playing a QB spy. That's what Bethany's doing.
What?
That was Charlie Brown's teacher to me. Like,
wah, 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 wah.
No, but seriously, I think there's a good balance of you telling Skylar. I mean, sometimes you do it even when we are there. We're just not maybe present as much as we should be. And that's also helpful to us. Like that's important to us with you living with us. It's just like being a part of the household and being able to like help raise our daughter.
I mean, she calls you auntie, so I would expect like that.
I really do try to be careful with that though.
Yeah. But I think that's the first thing that's ever required like a conversation. Like I don't feel like we've ever.
And even that was just
in the moment. It wasn't like hey, we need to talk on Monday.
The thing that makes it easy to live with Mason and Nichole is that what I see is what I get. And like if they want something, they pretty much just say it. And so I know what the expectations are.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been, at least for me, like built up stuff because I know they're safe to talk to in the moment about things. And I feel like they are with me too. So that honestly gets rid of a lot of potential drama.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that the kid thing is, I'll probably talk about that on other episodes too, but like very important, whether you live with somebody or not, but especially if you're a single person living with a couple, is like just to kind of know like what authority am I granted? When should I exercise it? Because if you don't know those things, you are just very lost. And like you can't, at the end of the day, you can't help the parents if you don't have what you need to do it, essentially. So like if she does something behind their backs and they've told you or haven't told you what to do, and you're just like, oh, I feel too awkward to like reinforce this, then she suffers for that because she's not learning the lesson she needs to learn. And sometimes I think hearing it from somebody who isn't their parents really reinforces that message in a way that the parents don't. It's like, oh, so this is the world outside my parents. This isn't just my parents' rule. Like everybody is saying this is the right thing to do or whatever. And having the ability to do that is very helpful. And I generally try to ask my friends, like, what do I do if this happens? You know, just because I know it will eventually, because kids like to manipulate people who aren't their parents just as much as their parents, if not more sometimes. And they're like, oh, let's see what we can get away with, you know, because it can be assumed that the parents are united. Not always. I've seen kids try to turn them against each other, but like, I think you kind of have to like show them that you're united to everybody in the house and like the rules are the rules. Yeah. And so yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's really helpful.
I do think there is definitely something with, even without kids, like that intentionality that we have to not let the dishes pile up and that become like a breaking point in a beautiful relationship. It's such a silly thing because those are the things, right? Like it's those everyday things that are the ones that get in the way because you start always being worried about, did they leave dishes behind? For me, obviously.
Yeah.
Those are the things. But like if you don't communicate those, then it just becomes something that gets in the way of you having a genuine relationship with the person.
Yeah.
Because you just see dishes when you look at them.
Or even if it's like, I mean, there's been times where it's like, hey, it's been a hard season and Bethany shares a bathroom with Skylar and usually we will clean it. But like if it's a hard season or if it seems like maybe Bethany would be up for doing it, like we just ask. And Bethany is...
She's now taken over that bathroom. We've already had that conversation.
Yeah.
That's fully a Bethany chore now.
So what?
There it is.
The other thing is there is a single person living in our house who can sleep in on Saturday mornings. But we have a 5-year-old who wakes up with the son who is like, well, she's us. So she's loud. She wakes up and she's on and that's all there is.
And she wants to sing in her room.
And she wants to do everything.
Which is right next to Bethany's.
However, and Bethany has French doors. So, I mean, like your room is pretty susceptible to noise. So the standoff is Bethany has said she can't hear anything.
Or if I do, it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother her.
I'll just go back to sleep. It's
So
fine.
I take Bethany at her word and let the 5-year-old be the 5-year-old. Mason, however, spends Saturday morning shushing Skylar. Even though Bethany has said that it's fine. So I do think, though, that shows like we still try to be courteous of each other, even if someone has said like, no, like really, it's okay. You can still be aware of the fact that what you're doing does impact another person in the house.
Yeah. That's good.
Mason's not known for overworrying. That's typically my department. But something about Saturday mornings, you are very concerned.
Precious time.
About Bethany's
worry
sleeping habits.
is not the word. It's trying to raise her up in the way that she should go.
Oh, yeah. Is that what it is?
Skylar, not Bethany.
Yeah. We're not trying to raise Bethany. We're trying to let her sleep. She's trying to sleep in.
Oh, man. Well, a lot of my married friends I've had on episodes up till now have this thing about really trying to be careful to not take advantage of their single friends in the babysitting department. And I wonder how y'all navigate that in terms of, because Bethany, you know, was actually a pro babysitter for a while, like on a paying basis, but she's also like very game to like step in, you know, when she's here and y'all aren't and do things. But how do y'all navigate that? Is that something you really have to communicate, or is it just something on a needs basis? Or
They probably are overly concerned. Think you probably could utilize me more.
Yeah, I don't think we
No.
ask you very often at all.
You don't.
No. I don't ever want to feel like you somehow owe me a babysitting job. Like
I think in some sense, if I'm planning a date night, it may be more of a like, Bethany might be an option on the back burner if I can't find someone else.
No, Bethany's the first option on a date night.
No.
Well, that's just silly.
Wow, there it is. See, overly cautious. We're just laying it all out
So
there.
Mason is the one guarding your time.
Right.
It's partially because I'm aware of the like, you were doing this full time for quite a while. And I think that was when I was probably a little more guarded,
Yeah.
just because like you already spend all day with kids. So you probably don't want to spend your evening also watching our child, even if you love our child just as much as the kids that you watch during the daytime, but it was about navigating it. Right. So like, I don't feel bad asking, and I'll be honest, most of the time it's Nichole that ends up asking anyways. But again, it's, I think, me just trying to be courteous of her time.
Yeah.
So
What about pets? Because you have a dog and a cat, and Bethany actually has a rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Because I know y'all kind of cover for
I
each
think
other.
honestly, the Lord has been good because I'm actually allergic to cats. And so I think we were all a little, well, Nichole in particular was a little scared about that.
Yeah, we got a cat, and you're like,
during COVID,
yeah.
this was actually one of the things. So like going back to the, we were trying to be really good about planning the Monday night things all the time and like having that standing thing. When we got a cat, I had zero thought or concern about anybody being allergic to a cat, just because I've had cats my whole life.
Right.
You didn't think about
But
it.
also, we got her, and Nicole's like, "Who's allergic to a cat?" And then we found out Bethany was allergic to a cat, and we were like, "Ah, crap."
I'm allergic to some cats more than others, and Sauce is not one of them. Or it's very minimal. So the Lord's just good.
so we will not need a replacement cat.
Yeah.
That's what was just said. Should something happen, we don't need another
It
cat.
probably helps that our house has
Doesn't have-
concrete
concrete
floors,
floors.
and so it's,
Yeah.
even though it's still going to be on the ground and there's dander on the couch and stuff, but
But like, as far as taking care of the animals and stuff, there's kind of communication that's like, hey, this weekend you going to be around because we're going to blah blah blah. Can you get or she's going? Can you feed Jerry in the morning? Jerry is the rabbit.
Yeah.
Skylar enjoys taking care of the bunny.
That makes me feel better about it.
Teaching responsibility. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's sweet. Bethany, what are some challenges in terms of just living as a single person in a house with a kid? Like, what are some ways that builds you up, and what are some ways that limits you?
Well, I have to be careful what I say
Not on this podcast, but in front of Skylar.
in front of Skylar. Yeah, there's certain like content on my phone I don't listen to or watch. So, I mean, those are just like practical things that affect how I live in this home. And so sometimes I'll go to my room, and sometimes it's okay, well, we just won't do that so that I can be more present and more a part of her life. It's kind of a balancing act of those two things.
Yeah.
So those are just practical things that
totally.
affect my life, but not in a negative way by any means. It's interesting creating boundaries with your friend's kid that you live with. I think that can be interesting sometimes, and thing that both of us are learning how to do. Still being welcoming to her though. So like boundaries, but still welcoming is something I think about quite a bit with her. So how much do I let her in my room, and how does the bathroom situation work? Because we do share a bathroom, things like that. But yeah, I think that's just a balance I'm trying to strike with her and make her feel seen and loved while also taking care of myself, because I'm not her parent.
Right.
And it's good. It's not, I enjoy it. I enjoy the energy that she brings. And is it overstimulating sometimes? Yes, absolutely. But also it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
I genuinely, I enjoy her. So
Yeah, it feels pretty good being called auntie as well.
Yeah.
I'm an uncle to many kids, and I'm more proud of that than a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just talking about like the bookshelf that fell that brought you all together. Like, I feel like the shared trauma of being overstimulated by a single child can bring you
Like
together too.
gaslighting. Like
Kind
she
of.
just like, I know what that term is because I have a daughter.
I don't know where she got it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on from kiddo. In terms of 2 women in a house, 1 dude in a house, actually 3 women in a house, technically, if you count the little one.
And all the animals except for Jerry are also
That's
girls.
right. Wow.
It's just Jerry and Mason.
Jerry and I holding it down.
That's what you're going to call your memoirs. Jerry and Mason. But in terms of the single person in your house being a female, are there any precautions or any conversations that you've had to take? And have there ever been any things you've had to think about? If not, I'd just love to hear that it's possible to just that works.
I think I just have my friendship with Mason in the presence of Nichole.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have too many conversations one-on-one. And I don't know that that's like, it's not something super thought about, at least on my end. But at times when there is just he and I around the house, I don't know. We don't like hang out. So when there's hangout time, it typically involves the 3 of us. I have more one-on-one time with Nichole.
I think we genuinely could, but especially for me, it's a matter of just like being able to like visibly exercise the integrity of it and like never putting her in any situation or me in any situation that could even be possibly construed or even just like, and this is not an occasion that happens very often, but like if I get home from work and Nichole and Skylar aren't home, like I will basically go back to our room and let Bethany have free reign of the house. That's
Or
not
vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say Bethany doesn't get free reign of the house. She absolutely gets free reign of the house
Yeah.
while everybody's here, but I will purposefully set myself aside because again, like we are friends, but also like I think it's important to do that.
Yeah.
Some people may view that as overly cautious.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel like I have a relationship with Mason. It's very, like, he feels like a brother.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sisters thing, like, I've never, ever batted an eye at the idea that it's Bethany and Mason. Like, but I do think that it is funny because you guys definitely have your own relationship apart from me. Like, there's 100%. You guys can go down entire tangents, and I'm like, I have nothing here. Like, I third wheel in the house all the time because I don't have anything to add to what you guys are talking about.
Even just recently, like, I feel like there's been several times where we will say the exact same thing.
Yeah, you guys have your own thing.
It's been kind of weird. It's like, we're like twins almost.
Yeah. And part of the dynamic is Nichole being annoyed at us.
Yeah, part of it is their brother-sister dynamic that is just a little bit for me to handle at times.
You can kind of build a relationship on that.
And that's fine. And it works.
Yeah.
But also, I think part of that is my relationship with Nichole is pretty strong. So, like, we have our own friendship.
Yeah.
So,
right.
It all works together. It's honestly something I don't think about that much.
It's awesome.
Like, oh, it's just Mason. I'll probably go to my room.
Yeah. I think it's really cool to hear that, though, because I think the whole purity culture thing has ruined a lot of people's minds and how to interact. But I also think it's just something that a lot of people, when they think, okay, living with a married couple, it's something they worry about a lot. And it's really cool to hear that, like, it can just be really natural and not consume your thoughts constantly or, put you constantly on guard or make you so like distant with the person that you end up neglecting your friendship with them by accident or something like that. It's nice to hear that it can just be natural. Even if it isn't for everybody, and some people do have to work with it or work at it, it's nice to hear that it can just be something that clicks.
Again, I'm not a worrier by any means. Like, I'm conscious of it and I do it, and that's kind of the end of it. Like, it doesn't have to like make me anxious throughout the rest of the day until Nichole gets home. So,
In terms of privacy, is there ever any like communication that has to happen like on, days where Bethany needs a little more privacy or maybe y'all need a little more privacy? Is there ever a time that you like request privacy on any kind of level of like, hey, we've got a thing going on, or is it just always like, hey, your room's right there, do what you want?
I think the closest answer to that is that we just check on each other's schedules. Like, what are you doing this week? Or and then we just kind of build around that and then let each other know if, someone's coming into town, whatever, but really not. Other than that, no, that I can think of.
We just choose to be decent humans to each other. Like, I mean, not to oversimplify it, but like, you live with other people, be aware of the fact that you live with other people. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
I can't think of a time that I've ever been like, Bethany, like, we just need some time.
They've never asked me to.
I don't think that's ever happened. Part of that is because Mason and I are such
extrovert.
People.
You guys actually like someone living with you.
Yeah. Genuinely. Well, you're the only one that's lived with us. We like when you live with us.
On the opposite side of that, though, you use the word extrovert. So I know you're a little more introverted, Bethany.
I just get overstimulated, honestly. I don't even really view it as like introverted versus extroverted. I just view it as being just trying to strike a balance between managing like my overstimulation and I guess getting some alone time. Like there is a part of me that is fed by that, but then also balancing that by making sure that I come out when they're here, or at least like checking in, like, hey, how was your day? Just stuff like that, or hanging out and making hanging out a part of not just Monday nights, but like a community that happens throughout the week. And so just reminding myself like, oh, they're here. Like go ahead and go out for a while and spend time with them. And it doesn't have to be the whole night, but sometimes it is.
I think that was one thing I was particularly not good at when I lived with the married couple, was being present, like physically with them a lot. Home is definitely like a cave to me. I have to crawl up in it and be by myself. And so living with people I'm not as good at it, I think. So I wouldn't come out for long periods of time because I was working on music or doing other things I can really only do by myself with headphones on or whatever. And they would kind of just be like, does Kevin not like us anymore? You know? And so, and they communicated it. And like I tried to explain it to them and then tried to do a little bit better myself. But I think that's definitely something, if you tend to like to hole up a little bit more, you have to think about. Yeah. And if you're super extroverted, you might have to think about maybe not being around so much. There could be a level of that too.
And from just our perspective too, is that I think it's okay to understand that like maybe somebody just wants to be in their room more. Like maybe they like spending time alone in the quiet or staring at their phone or whatever the case may be, and not being hurt by it. Right? Like the person has chosen to live with you. So like clearly they like being around you, or at least they are comfortable enough to say, yes, I'll come live with you. Again, I think it kind of goes back to what you're saying before of like having that standing day. Like there's always something to come back to fight that loneliness or fight that feeling hurt by somebody going to the room, in that like they chose to come live with you, or they chose to have that night every week to spend the time with you.
Yeah.
I think it took Skylar time to learn that there could be a version of like not everybody being in everybody's face all the time. Like, I think it did take her some time to realize that. And I think that, honestly, it was kind of good for me to have to explain that to her, because it kind of re-solidified that in myself. No, like, Auntie Beth just wants some time to herself, and that's okay. And then it also can go to the other side, because there was that one day that, like, you were, like, sick. Like, super sick. And, like, a friend texted and was like, hey, how's Bethany's doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, is something going on with Bethany? Because you were in your room and I just didn't think anything of it, because that can be a thing that happens. So there was also like the opposite side of that, which is like, also still check on the person that goes to the room.
Yeah. And like Nichole checks on me sometimes, and I like that. And I'm confident that they like me enough as a person that if I pop out of my room when they come home, they're happy to see me.
Yeah.
So like that helps me feel safe enough to come out, honestly.
Yeah.
So it all kind of works together.
I had a set of married friends recently that were telling me that, because they've had a lot of roommates throughout the years, because they just kind of have a room that they just constantly have people in and out of. And they're telling me the thing that they really didn't like in a roommate was somebody who would come and sit out in the middle of the living room, but stay on their phone and not engage with any of them. It's like, I'm here, but I'm not here.
Really here.
Yeah. Or just like kind of come to watch the show, I guess, but not actually participate in it, which is, I mean, I think so much of being like a single person who's welcomed into the house of married people's, I'm down for participation in the show. Like, I'm a part of the circus, I don't want to just sit there and watch it, because that's not really being a friend. That's being a spectator. Yeah. So to each their own. I think everybody has their own, things that annoy them and don't annoy them and all that. But we now know yours. So obviously I do want to address this, because I want to be honest and like not shy away from hard things, but I also don't want to be super awkward about it. And I feel like there's an elephant in the room when you start thinking as a single person about living with married people. And generally that elephant is, what if I accidentally hear them have sex or something? Or, just know that that's going to happen, because it's going to happen, but just like,
Lord willing.
yeah, Lord willing, hopefully. But yeah, just being overly awkward about that or whatever, and just kind of worrying too much to let yourself live with a married couple. And I'm not going to make y'all go into any details with your own lives. I think that would just not be helpful. But I have had that experience. I'll speak from my own experience. I did a couple of times when I lived with my married couple end up in that situation. And it was really just unfortunate because the way the house was laid out, my room was in between their room, which was right by the kitchen. So I had to go past their bedroom to get to the kitchen. And I was a night owl at that time. So I'd stay up till like 3 a.m. So like at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I'm out of water. I want a snack. I'm going to the kitchen to get some water and a snack. And just passing that door, a couple of times where like brain just snapped. I was like, I'm hearing something I shouldn't hear. Very quickly, very quietly, get my water, get my snack, get back to the room, shut the door very quietly. Never told them about it. Like I wouldn't do that to them. It's just unnecessary. But what I did do is start taking 2 glasses of water to my room so I didn't have to come out later at night and put myself in that situation.
Yeah.
You may run into that situation. Like that's something you've got to be ready to live with. And I think you're an adult. We're all adults. I hope you're an adult. You could be really young and listening to this. I don't know. But like just be mature about it. I don't think there's any reason to tell them that happened unless it's just out of hand or something. You're just like, guys.
Out of hand.
But like, I don't think that's going to happen to you. I really don't.
I don't want to know.
But like, I haven't run into that. Praise God.
Yes.
But if I ever like suspect, I just say, well, praise the Lord. And then I turn it off.
Which I feel like is the best, like that you could say to somebody as like, they're married. That is a part of being married.
Yep.
And that honors the Lord.
Right. And praise God for it. But
just not let myself be curious.
Yeah.
Just like praise the Lord and move
take
on.
the thought captive.
Yep.
Continue.
Yeah. But I like haven't even had to worry about that
of course,
because Mason and Nichole are very considerate.
Yeah.
So I haven't had to worry about it. I just haven't.
Yeah, and I tend to feel like that's an attitude you find among married people who are willing to have another person in their house is consideration, because you know what you're sacrificing, which is just a lot of privacy, you know? And so, yeah, I think it's just something to consider. If you're going to move in with a married couple, just that might happen. Just be as considerate of them as they've been of you to have you in their house in the first place. And yeah, I mean, is there anything else, any suggestions you might have for people who are worried about avoiding a situation like that, like from the married perspective, maybe?
If your house is set up in a way that they could be in another part of the house, that would be helpful.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it all kind of goes back to what we've been talking about at this point of like, we are considerate of one another. We know what's going on in each other's lives. We are aware of just like schedules. There's an awareness of the other person.
Yeah.
And you live life with that other person in a specific way. Like you do sacrifice like having the ability to just like whenever. Granted, we have a kid, so there's also not the, there's not the whenever. But
the 1 a.m. situations.
Again, knocked out. But you're working your schedule around what is going on in the other person's life. And the same thing for Bethany. Like when she knows that we're on a date night, most of the time Bethany is gone out with other friends as well if she's not watching Skylar. And then even then sometimes we get home and she might go hang out with some friends. There's always kind of this give and take and understanding what is going on in the other person's life. And so like when you are actively involved in the other person's life that you're living with, it's just easier to do that. Yeah. Like you might still run into situations where it's like, oh no,
we thought we were good and Bethany just came in.
Oh no, her car's out there. When did she get here?
What happened?
But like it's just being considerate and understanding what's going on in the other person's life.
Yeah, I think your comment earlier about just knowing each other's schedules, like that can sound a bit intrusive to some people, I think. But I think that's honestly what makes it so easy for you guys is like if you just treat people with consideration and you know what their schedule is, you typically kind of know based on what they're doing that day what they might need from you. And like you can just move in that way. And that sounds like that's what you do. And it sounds like what you two do as well. And
it's not like it's like we sit down with our like planners or our phones and like share a calendar. Like as we are ships in the night, we're just like, hey, like, what's your weekend look like? What's your
or we text each other or whatever. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, again, not something I did super well when I was in that situation. There were a lot of surprises in our household because I just didn't know what was going on because I didn't ask. Yeah. So, that's good advice. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. when I used to be dating someone, even I would like let Nichole what was going on there. So even some accountability for me there. That was good.
Oh, that's awesome. Nichole, you mentioned to me one time that having a person living with you kind of reminds you that there's a broader social world out there, and that like sometimes when you just have your own family, you kind of go nuclear American family very easily and just kind of shut everything else out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really easy to forget what other people are doing. Living with a single person helps me remember that I'm happy to be married. So that's like... It does. It helps me remember, like, I do have another person that can help me think through this, like a built-in default person that's there. So it helps with that. I think it helps me, like, see the availability that she has to serve others. And she does that well, like her availability to other people. So there's also that dynamic of, like, yeah, you can just, like, ask somebody to pop over. It is different because it just helps you see the world differently because they're not in the exact same reality that you are. And I think that when you are married with kids, you tend to be friends with people that are married with kids, and you're so bubbled.
Yeah. When I think from this, and you can speak to more of this, Bethany, but from my experience, when you're single, you don't, especially just, you know, if you live away from your family, you're estranged from your family or whatever, like, the hardest part about being single for me is just a little bit of that, like, well, who do I tell? Who's excited about what I did today? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. And I think that's one of the things I do miss about living with a married couple is that, like, you kind of have tangible in front of you family all the time.
Yep.
Whereas like my friends are my family, absolutely, but I have to go to them. And generally I have to do a lot of pursuing on my end because I've got the freedom. Whereas if you live with somebody, it is kind of like in some ways being married without the romance, because you've got people who are just your family around with you that you can turn to for things that come up that are very practical, or just like a dark night of the soul where you're like, I just need somebody to binge Netflix with, and here you are, you know, or whatever. And I think that's a really sweet thing about having friends just right there with you.
And I think it's something I mentioned when we were talking about me living with a kid. I think it's okay to live in a way that is not completely convenient for myself. Like, that's okay. That's healthy for me.
Yeah.
And to be reminded of different kinds of needs from my own, that's helpful
Yeah.
and helps me be a better friend and be a more empathetic person and just have a better knowledge with which to have friendships.
And living with someone who's even in a different life stage than you, even if a young married couple had moved in with us, just being friends or being in, I'm just going to say community, doing life with someone who is in a different part of life than you is just really edifying.
I think edifying's a good word for that. It builds you up.
I think you really hit something that I haven't hit before, Bethany, which is it's very easy to become very self-centered when you're single and you live by yourself. You don't deny yourself a lot, and there's not a lot of accountability unless you put it there yourself with people who don't live with you, which is even harder. And so I think that is a huge advantage to living with people who are in a different life stage as yours, but you know, even just people who are in a life stage that you wish to get to someday, is that you kind of see what is required if you ever are going to get married, which is a lot of denial of self. It's a lot of sacrifice. And then you look at your own life knowing that you have the freedom to do what you want right now. And you say, maybe it's healthy if I do deny myself right now, just to go ahead and get used to it, you know, just to go ahead and round things out. Because if I want to head here, then I need to start practicing for this. If I want to head here, I need to go ahead and get used to the idea that, like, my things aren't all going to be my own. I can't hold on to things if I'm going to have a kid because those things will get broken. You know, I can't get super mad about that. It's just how it is. Or, you know, hey, I can't just have my way all the time, so maybe I should just not get my way all the time and put that into place now. So yeah, I think that's a really beautiful thing.
I think it's a reminder of the way that Paul talks about singleness as a huge benefit to the body. It's not supposed to be for your own, necessarily for your own personal freedom or for your own, when he talks about it being, he wishes that everyone were single, it's actually for the benefit of the body.
Yes.
And so living with in a community and actually living within it is a reminder of that. And it's very helpful for me.
Yeah.
I think a thing too that happens, at least in marriage, and I'll only speak for mine, but I think like when we got married, I expected Mason to be like everything. Like romantic comedies really set me up for like that best friend. You want to do every hobby together. You want to be a part of everything together. When you expect someone else to be that for you, they will fail you, period, end of story. No one can do that.
Yeah.
And so it is really cool, the relationship that Bethany and Mason have, because they can talk about dork things and I don't have to try to care about that.
They're not dork things.
Mason and I can talk about other things. And like, like it's a beautiful thing to have more relationships under your roof. Mm-hmm. I made the comment about like, it reminds me that I want to be married. I'm very happy in my marriage. Clearly, we're 10 years in here. But like, it is hard to be in relationship with other people. Marriage, roommate, any real deep relationship is hard. And so even like moments that I'm like annoyed or something, there's someone else there, Mason or Bethany, to say like, is that big of a thing? Or like, well, maybe this was their perspective. More people is better.
Yeah.
Like the church is called to be a family and do that.
Yeah. Literally, that's the best gift God gave us. It's the best gift Christ gave us is when he gave us the church. And he says, hey, I want you to be unified under me. I'm all you need in common to have great relationships together. And it's an absolute gift to have community in that way. So y'all just have a little community in your house. Cool. Well, at the end of every episode, because I learned so much from watching my married friend's marriage, because again, I want to be married someday and I want to start off from a wiser place than I would have if I had not known you guys and spent time with you guys. And so I generally put my married friends on the spot and just ask if there's anything about your marriage that you're particularly proud of, that you think just the two of you as people just think clicks or works really well, or something that like didn't click and work very well that y'all fought very hard for, that y'all are in a great place now and very proud that you got to that place.
I think we have honest communication with one another. Even in hard conversations, it's plainly honest. One of us may do it better than the other, but like at the end of the day, like we're both willing to go to that point. And I don't think it's one of us does it better than the other all the time. Like I think there are some times that one of us may be willing to go there more thoroughly than the other person. Mm-hmm. And again, like I think that's hard to do, but there's an honesty in our marriage, and I think we have continued to get better at doing that. I think we've always been good at communication because we were long distance before we got married, so that's a lot of what we had. But yeah, I think it's a key to, I think, what has helped sustain us at this point. Even in our relationship with Bethany, which Bethany already talked about, like it has helped us to flesh that out in our other friendships and relationships that we have.
I think we're both a lot less reactive in our marriage than we once were. And I think, at least for me, when it changed the dynamic of our marriage, because I was expecting him to be Jesus. Like I thought I married a Christian, so clearly I married the Lord. And that was a completely unrealistic expectation. And I think the sooner that I kind of let go a little bit of just these unrealistic comparisons that I had put on what our marriage is, when I feel the best in our marriage is the moments when I'm not comparing it to other people's. The hardest seasons are when I wanted our dynamic to be something different than the way the Lord made us. Like, I'm not talking about sin nature. I'm talking about like extroverted humans. It is okay that we always want to be around other people and don't necessarily need to have a candlelight dinner alone every time we're hanging out.
I see. Yeah.
And that was like something that I really did struggle with, because I thought that that was what relationships were supposed to be. And I compared it to everybody else's. Even after being married and like being committed to that being the person that I'm going to be with, I still tried to make it someone else's marriage.
Yeah.
So I think that's my own personal growth in marriage, but I do think that that has really changed our dynamic, because I'm not trying to make us something different than we are.
That's awesome.
I've got one more.
Okay.
We're
very proud. We just had our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
That's true. I've caught you at a time where you're thinking about it.
This is actually something that I have been proud of throughout our marriage, not just because we're 10 years in. This feels weird to even say this because it feels like I'm bragging, but I'm super.
He
not.
asked us to.
Yeah, I know. And it's super of the Lord and what the Lord has done in our lives individually. I feel like we do a really good job of putting the other person's needs before our own.
Yeah, I think that's actually really true.
It feels weird to say it, but like oftentimes I have to remind myself, I have to die to myself to live for Christ. But in also dying to myself, I'm also able to actually give something to my wife. And that is freeing when I'm not having to worry about satisfying my own needs and desires. Christ gives me the desire to fulfill hers. And that fleshes out in all aspects of life.
That's awesome. Well, before we go, I do want to just honor Bethany because in some ways I feel like Bethany is far more qualified to host this podcast than I am. She's probably better at everything that I'm even slightly good at. And we're actually going to have her on for an episode where just the two of us talk later on. I'm excited about that. That will be really fun to just talk about the woes of singleness, but also just the really cool things about it. And I'm, honestly, just the girl's perspective of it, because I'm a dude and I have it really good in every area of life compared to women. And so hearing just hearing about kind of what it's like for you will be really edifying for everybody. But thanks for coming on, guys. It was a great time. Enjoyed it.
Proud of us.
Yeah.
Way to go, guys.
Go team.
Thank you, Kevin.
Next time on the podcast,
I've found a lot of joy in being single.
I talk with my friend Bethany about the ways her experience of being a single woman.
The part that can be weird is interacting with my friends' husbands. I'm not a danger to but also I appreciate boundaries.
Have differed from mine as a single man.
You probably have to be really careful how you are around your friends' kids because you're a guy.
And how they've lined up.
That's not to say that my life is easier, but I do have less complications when it comes to my time.
This podcast is made by humans. We get things wrong. We have blind spots. So we want to hear from you. What are your experiences? Is there something we missed that you'd like to hear about? I'm working on some bonus episodes to fill in the gaps and really want your feedback. So please email the show at professionalthirdwheelpodcast@gmail.com. Or even better, leave a voice message by calling 615-953-0360. Join us ordinary people in helping other ordinary people. The show is edited and produced by me, Kevin Morris. Music by The Universal Donor. Logo by Kyle Patterson. We're a part of the Honest Edge Media Network. Check us out at honestedgemedia.com. And because I'm so bad at self-promotion, please help me out by sharing, or maybe leave a review, preferably 5 stars. This really helps the show be found by others who might benefit from it. You'll find new episodes in your feed the first and third week of each month. So until next time. All right, I already took a lot of your time at the top of the episode, so I'm just going to share with you the best joke I've ever come up with. And it's pretty bad, so don't give your hopes up. How does Jesus like his steak? Well done, my good and faithful servant. Are you laughing? You're not laughing, are you? I told you it was pretty bad.